is up, my martial arts fanatics? As always, I'm Coach Greg. Welcome back to System Breakdown. Today we're talking about the system breakdown of Sean Strickland, who just recently beat Israel Adesanya. So, of course, we can't have this conversation without talking about a little bit of post-fight analysis on the fight that just occurred with Adesanya. But what I really want to talk about is the system that allowed Sean Strickland to be so successful. Now, for those of you who watched my pre-fight analysis, you will know that I was one of the few people who said, like, look, Strickland is going to be kind of a problem for Adesanya. He really presents some real problems in terms of a stylistic matchup that's going to be very difficult for Adesanya. And sure enough, Adesanya came in there. I think he did not take him seriously enough, and you could see that in the first round until he got clipped. And then he just was not able to develop an effective strategy. Now, I think that Strickland is a guy who can be beaten if you have the right strategy. I just don't think Adesanya had one, whereas Strickland had clearly done his homework. He had the right game plan. He made the right adjustments. His coaching, the cornering was exceptional. I think between the third and the fourth round, it was one of the best coaching moments I've seen for cornering in the MMA, or in the UFC rather, where the coach said, number one, he lit a fire under his ass saying, like, look, you're landing clean shots. You need to get in there, not let him stand the outside, try to pick you apart. You need to get some devastating shots when you back him up. And then he told him how to do that. And he said, look, when you get a guy who moves his head a lot on the outside, you can't headhunt. You have to start attacking the body. And that was absolutely the correct advice for him, particularly in that moment. It was exceptional. So credit to his corner on that. But I want to say that during this fight, he really did exactly the things he needed to do. And you could definitely tell he had done his homework by training with guys like Alex Pereira, Marvin Vettori. He knew what he was getting into, and he had the right game plan for it. It doesn't hurt that Sean Strickland is a fucking animal. That guy loves to fight. He loves to brawl, and what he is able to do with his system really plays towards his strength, which is his ability to get into the pocket and use boxing. He forced Adesanya into a boxing match, and this is why Adesanya had so many problems, because he was not able to implement a lot of his game. Let's talk about why that is. First of all, Sean Strickland uses a Philly shell. Now, I have talked about in the Nemean fight system, one of the things I really recommend. Now, we do a lot of long guard. We start retracting back to here, and we start advancing here, the expanding, contracting guard. But one of the things I've talked about is adjusting this based on what you encounter. When you have somebody who either wrestles a lot or does a lot of body kicking, you need to switch to a Philly shell. This is a much better guard for somebody who body kicks a lot. Particularly somebody like Adesanya, who does a lot of level changing off of a body kick. And what he was able to do is negate a lot of Adesanya's game through the use of the Philly shell by just letting that stuff absorb off of him. It's the right type of guard for that. Now, on top of that, he does a couple other things really well. Two things in particular I want to point out that he does probably better than anyone else, certainly in that division. One is that his ability to cut off ring space really allows him to be so successful. There's a lot of similarities, in fact, between him and the Jose Aldo breakdown we just did, forcing guys into a pocket, forcing them to box, being aware, proactively aware of leg kicks, and forcing guys into an uncomfortable situation. Now, Jose Aldo is a little bit different, where he forces them in and uses a lot of head movement. Sean Strickland, on the other hand, he forces them in and just absorbs. Absorb. Conservation of motion, conservation of energy, right? What's interesting is that even if you do leg kick him, it's going to be not very effective because of the fact that his game is not based on mobility. His game is a slow Terminator style where he backs you up and he cuts off your space. He stays parallel with the ring, and he did a phenomenal job with cutting off space in this fight against Adesanya. All he does is he comes back here, he walks. He goes parallel with the ring, and he slowly cuts off space until you're backed into a boxing range. He gets you behind the black line, and now you're forced to box with the guy. When you are on your heels and you can't be successful in your movement and working at this, working angles and stuff like that, it's going to be very difficult to implement a good kicking game. And so he's cut that part out of it. Now with Adesanya, he didn't have to worry about takedowns. Now, if he had been taken down, he does have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He does tend to do things like get to butterfly hooks, kick guys off, stuff like that. But I do think he might run into some problems later on. Derek Brunson, I don't know if Marvin Vettori is going to be good enough to take him down. His level changes are good, but I don't think that he's going to be enough of a threat there. Dricus Du Plessis, the problem with Dricus Du Plessis is he requires a lot of range. He likes to get on the outside, create a lot of space. And if you can cut off that space, the ability to create that reactive shot that he's always looking for might be a problem. I think the guy who is going to probably be the most problems for him is somebody like a Bo Nichols. That guy, man, Bo Nichols is going to come in there and he'll be on top of him, right? That guy's a monster. That could be a real problem. But I think right now in the top 10, there's nobody who's going to be a real significant threat to him because of this style that he implements where he forces guys into a boxing range, absorbs, and then he does the second thing that I was going to mention that he is exemplary at. And it's something that Valentina Shevchenko is really good at. And it's the ability to not respond unless something's going to make contact. If that punch coming in is going to be an inch short, you don't see him move. Which means that he doesn't bite on feints either. So for a guy like Adesanya, whose game is based on mobility, feinting, building off of the feint to create level changes, he essentially took out all the important things of Adesanya's game and forced him into a boxing match in a situation where he was able to play tight and win. And the other thing is, so Adesanya, a lot of times, and like this is the thing that I had been talking about. A lot of people have been comparing Sean Strickland to, he's not as fast as some of the other guys he's fought. Speed is not everything. Or, against Paulo Costa, look what he did to Costa. Look what he did to Whitaker. Very different styles. Costa's a brawler. He's not very technical. And if you can deny him the ability to just swarm you, it's pretty easy to beat a guy like that. That's what Adesanya did against him. Just picked him apart from the outside. Whitaker, on the other hand, who blitzes a lot, he just stayed back, bam, and catches him. This is what he does really well, is he evades with his head and throws counters. So if you don't blitz on a guy like that, you don't give him opportunities for his most successful counters. The other thing that's difficult is with the Philly shell. Adesanya does a lot of like top hand pressure and stuff like that to stay on top of this hand and start connecting. And if you don't give him this, it takes another part of his game away. So essentially what the problem for Adesanya is that a lot of his game is designed to counter Adesanya's game. As far as the leg kicks now, Adesanya does do a lot of leg kicks, and he used that in particular to start going up to the head. If normally I would have said he probably would have been successful really chopping away at the legs and trying to do more damage, but even that presents problems in that somebody like Strickland, he walks guys down. He's not a mobility-based guy. So even if you do start hitting some calf kicks, you got to be able to drop him and be able to do enough damage to really drop him in like an Edson Barboza kind of way. And the problem is that he's not going to let you get enough of those in. And especially after the work he's done with Pereira, his ability to respond to leg kicks, I'm going to go back to the Jose Aldo thing again, putting a lot more attention on that because he can play such a tight guard that he can put attention on this because he knows he can beat you in the boxing stuff. So he can put a little bit more attention on this. And when it came to leg kicks, I don't think he barely ate any. Every time Adesanya went for it, he was just on the spot with the checking. He did a great job checking leg kicks in this fight, really denying Adesanya the ability to be successful with the leg kicking game. That's a real problem. So even if you do make contact with the leg kicks, one, he's not reaching down for it, which is what Adesanya is really trying to create. And two, you're not doing enough damage to matter, and most of the time he's checking because he can just be very focused, and if you do happen to throw it, you're probably not going to land it, and if you throw it more than once, you're definitely not going to land it. The only way to land with a guy like that is through the principle of projected intention. But once again, Adesanya's feint game, which normally would make this possible by putting all his energy up here and slipping these in, it was denied by the fact that Strickland doesn't bite on feints. He can mostly ignore that stuff unless he knows it's going to make contact. And this is a skill you can only develop by fighting a lot. And this is something Strickland does. He spars constantly. Very, very hard sparring against some of the toughest guys you could find. The Alex Pereiras, Marvin Vittori's. His camp, man, that guy, he likes to brawl. He is very aware of when something is going to make contact or not make contact. And if it's not going to make contact, he'll ignore it. Doesn't even matter to him. So, in a lot of ways, he was exactly the wrong kind of fight. The other thing that he did really well that I liked was his use of the front kick. He used it more than I've seen him use it in the past. I've seen him use it in the past, but in this fight in particular, he was really great about it, where as he backed Adesanya up, a lot of front kicks up the middle to start dropping the hands to give him more access to land with the jab. Giving him a nice level change, threatening the jab, coming in here with a good front kick. And particularly if Adesanya tried to change an angle on him or try to come in too quickly, he could catch him and move him back and keep him pinned back against the cage with the lateral front kick. Brilliant use of it. That combined with this, cutting off ring space and just setting up a good jab, not overcommitting, it made it very tough. It was a perfect defensive system that allowed him to slowly pick at Adesanya. Now, the great thing about Sean Strickland is that normally when he lands, he swarms. In the first round, you saw that. But then the rest of the fight, you saw him kind of pull that back a little bit, that desire to just kind of be on top of you. And I think in the first round, it was necessary because it set a precedent very early on that this is a real threat, that Adesanya can't just stay on the outside and ignore this pressure. Normally, he'd like to dance around and land stuff, right? Pop and evade. And Strickland's game made him too much of a threat where Adesanya could not take this lightly. He had to be... And I think when he first came out in the fight, he didn't take him seriously enough. And then all of a sudden, he got clobbered in the first round. And Strickland got behind him. He was just walloping him. Almost finished him in the first. Created a real threat to him. But then the rest of the fight, what was interesting is most of the fight, he stayed very disciplined. He landed clean shots. He worked him up to the back, landed a heavy cross, but then he didn't overcommit. Because I think they understood that if he overcommitted, there was a risk of accidentally walking into something. And when you're winning by slowly breaking a guy down the way that Strickland did, you don't change tactics. And so that showed a tremendous amount of restraint by Strickland and a tremendous amount of discipline as a fighter, which I really have to respect. And then, like I said, that cornering advice, when you back a guy to the corner and use a lot of head movement to start attacking the body, was great advice as well. So he kind of put on the perfect fight. Now, there's some ups and downs of this system. The upside is that if you are a really good boxer, it allows you to play to that strength and to beat guys and create real problems for them. Now, why didn't this work for Alex Pereira? Glad you asked. Alex Pereira created a nice setup that allowed him... First of all, Pereira's got better hands. He hits hard. And you have to be threatening. The other thing is that he was better able to circle out and use his reach and his length to not get pinned into a corner the way that Adesanya did. With Adesanya, Strickland was very able to keep him on the black line. With Pereira, he was able to circle out a little bit more. But the other thing you see is in the Pereira fight, he attacks the right side of the body and then circles to the left a lot. He starts throwing these right roundhouse kicks to the body, the right cross a lot to the head, right, circling out. He throws an occasional left side kick, but it's mostly right side body kick, right side cross. Why? Because as he's circling, he's trying to get Strickland to start bringing his hands over here and down. And that's exactly what he does. And then he lands that left hook. And as we all know, Pereira's left hook, it just flattens people. And that's really what he did, is he took his time, he stayed on the outside, he set him up, he threw heavy hands, and then when the hands started to drop on his right, our left, bam! He throws that beautiful hook, follows up with a cross, creates a real problem for him. Now, what are some things that Izzy could have done when you face a style like this? Because I like to talk about both the strengths and weaknesses to a style. Or at least I've been trying to add that more into the system breakdowns. There are a couple things that Adesanya, I think, could have done. I think he could have level changed in a different way, throwing a cross with a leg kick behind, or that kind of stuff, or similar to what you saw with like the Leon Edwards fight, where you throw that high cross and you put a high roundhouse behind it, like that kind of stuff. I think that would have been more successful for him. I think lateral kicking, front kicks down the middle, would have been really successful to start to create some space in here. Having a takedown threat is going to be a real problem for somebody like Strickland. Now, Strickland's got a great bottom game. He's got a great jiu-jitsu game. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He is not somebody you can push around on the ground. And that's part of what makes his style so successful, is that balance. I do think you can beat a guy like this with a kicking game, but you have to do it differently. I would have done a lot of leg kicks. I think what would have worked well is a lot of circling techniques, and I didn't see enough of that out of Adesanya. Adesanya tried to stay in here and do a lot of switching and stuff and play his normal game. It just didn't work. Circling. I would have liked to have seen that leg kick to a hook, circling out kind of stuff like what we talked about in the Zhang Wei Li breakdown would have worked really well. Coming in here, and that puts you at an angle, and that allows you to set up other things. So you go to like leg kick, hook, come up high with the high kick. Stuff like that would have probably been more successful. I think that with Strickland, if I were Adesanya, I probably would have done a lot of countering off of the jab, sitting back here, wait for the jab, pop, pop, come on top, right? Come on top. That type of stuff would have worked really well here. First and third principle, pop, pop, pop. That stuff would have worked really well. Basically, you had to have good boxing tactics and just know that most of what he's going to try to throw is a lot of that jab and just be defensive against that. I think that you can also do a lot of stuff to kick through that shell. You know, in boxing, you don't have to worry about this because you got gloves on and you can absorb a lot through this. But if you start taking some shins onto these biceps and triceps, you could really start penetrating through this and just throw really devastating kicks into pick one arm and just start really devastating through it and making him fear getting kicked in this arm. Now all of a sudden he's got to change tactics, right? He can't just leave himself all tight. That could create some problems. I think that there's some other things that he could do if in the rematch. I'd be interested to see what kind of strategy he puts together for a rematch. But I do think that there is a lot to be looked at when you talk about a style where the system that Strickland puts together with the Philly shell, forcing them into boxing, coming in here, working the jab, not biting on the feints, being able to defend things in case a takedown does come. The Philly shell, like I said, one of the advantages of that from a defensive standpoint for wrestling, underhooks, right? Talked about that in the Robert Whittaker breakdown. He does a lot of this Philly shell. Why? Because if you shoot on him, he's able to get the underhooks. If you try to body clinch on him, I see his flare his elbows out. Defensively, it's a very strong position for wrestling as well as the body kicks. It's a great guard. The reason I don't teach it as much in the Nemean fight system is because from a percentage-wise, most people are going to be headhunters. If you do get somebody, though, this is a great guard to switch to. And I think that it's worked really well, and this particular style has been fantastic. So overall, you know, congrats to him. If you have your own thoughts on this, please throw in the comments below about things that you think make him successful, or if there's fighters that you want to see me cover. I know I said I was going to probably do this based off of whatever you guys voted for the next video. I haven't seen enough votes on that yet, but I did want to put this one down because this is a great case study. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you share with your friends.